Imagine this. You're a trusted merchant in medieval London. Your life a tapestry of deals and dreams, until one fateful betrayal by your closest ally shatters everything, landing you in the dreaded Pillory, exposed to the jeering mob's rotten fury. What happens next? Let's dive into the tale. Chapter 1. The bustling streets of 13th century London. Let's step into the vibrant, gritty world of London in 1285, where the air buzzes with the energy of a city on the rise. The streets are alive with the clatter of wooden carts, the shouts of merchants peddling their wares, and the rhythmic clang of blacksmiths shaping iron in open forges. Smoke curls from chimneys, mixing with the sharp scent of fresh-baked bread and the earthy temps of livestock. This is the world of Elias Thorne, a wool merchant who's fought his way from nothing to a respected name in the city's bustling trade markets. Today, we're diving into Elias's life, his daily grind, his dreams, and the fragile trust that holds his world together. In 13th century London, opportunity and danger walked hand in hand, and Elias is about to learn just how thin that line can be. London in 1285 is a city of contrasts. King Edward I, known as Longshanks, rules with an iron hand, bringing a sense of order to a kingdom still raw from earlier wars. His laws have tamed some of the chaos, but the city is far from safe. The River Thames is the lifeblood of trade, its muddy waters crowded with boats unloading exotic spices, fine silks, and barrels of wine from far-off lands like Bordeaux and Venice. Along the riverbanks, grand stone churches like St. Paul's loom over ramshackle wooden houses, where the wealthy and the wretched live practically side by side. The streets are narrow, often muddy, and teeming with people fishwives haggling, apprentices scurrying, and the occasional noble in fine furs gliding through the crowd. For a man like Elias, this is a city of endless possibility, but also a place where one wrong move could cost you everything. Elias Thorne is no nobleman. He's a commoner, born to a family of weavers in a small village outside London. At 15, he left home with nothing but a sack of dreams and a knack for bartering. Now, at 35, he's carved out a solid life in the heart of the city, near the busy market street of Cheapside. His home is modest but sturdier, two-story timber house, with a thatched roof, shared with his wife, Agnes, and their 8-year-old son, William. The ground floor doubles as a storeroom for wool bales, the air thick with the greasy scent of lanolin. Each morning Elias rises before dawn, the chill of the autumn air biting as he lights a fire in the hearth. Agnes, a practical woman with a warm smile, prepares a simple breakfast of barley porridge and ale, while William, bright and curious, peppers his father with questions about the market. "Will you sell to the king today, Papa?" he asks, his voice full of awe. Elias chuckles, ruffling the boy's hair. "Maybe one day, lad," he says, though in truth he's closer to that dream than ever. Elias's day begins with a short walk to the wool exchange, a sprawling open-air market near the Guildhall where merchants gather to buy and sell. The exchange is a riot of noise and colour traders shouting over each other, shepherds driving bleating flocks, and clerks scribbling deals on parchment. Wool is England's gold in the 13th century, prized across Europe for its quality. Elias specializes in Cotswold wool, known for its soft, durable fibers, perfect for the fine cloth demanded by nobles and clergy. He's built a reputation for fair dealing, but he's no pushover. At the exchange, he haggles fiercely with a grizzled shepherd named Thomas, negotiating a batch of fleeces down to a price that leaves both men satisfied. You drive a hard bargain, Thorne, Thomas grumbles, but there's a glint of respect. In his eye, Elias just grins. Years of scraping by have taught him how to read people, how to push without breaking a deal. What sets Elias apart isn't just his skillets, his partnership with Geoffrey Blackwood, a fellow merchant who's been his closest ally for over a decade. The two met as hungry apprentices, bonding over shared struggles in a city that chews up the weak. Geoffrey is shorter than Elias, with a quick laugh and a knack for charming customers, but he's always been the more cautious of the pair together. They've outsmarted bigger traders, pooling their resources to buy in bulk and undercut rivals. Their friendship is cemented by late nights in smoky taverns, planning their next move over mugs of cheap ale. "We're unstoppable, Elias," Geoffrey often says, clapping him on the shoulder, and for years they have been. Their latest triumph is a contract to supply wool to a royal clothier, a deal that could lift Ilias's family into a new level of prosperity. It's the kind of break most merchants only dream of, promising enough coin to buy a bigger house, maybe even send William to a proper school. But medieval London is a city where trust is both a lifeline and a liability. The wool trade is governed by powerful guilds, groups of merchants who set prices, enforce quality, and punish cheaters with brutal efficiency. A false step, say, selling substandard wool or shortchanging a buyer could mean fines, banishment from the guild, or worse, a stint in the pillory, that wooden contraption in the town square where offenders are locked and pelted with whatever the mob can find. Elias knows the risks, but he's careful, checking every bale himself and keeping meticulous records. He trusts Geoffrey to do the same, their partnership a shield against the city's dangers. What he doesn't see is the shadow growing in Geoffrey's heart. Envy, that quiet poison, has been creeping in. Elias's charm and recent success, especially the royal contract, have left Geoffrey feeling like the lesser man. Whispers in the market call Elias the brains of the operation, and Geoffrey's pride is starting to crack, as the sun climbs higher. Elias seals the royal contract at the Guildhall, shaking hands with a stern-faced clerk who represents the king's household. The deal is a coup: hundreds of pounds of wool to be delivered over the next year, enough to make Elias a name beyond Cheapside. He strides home, his chest puffed with pride, imagining Onnes's joy when he tells her. At the market, he buys a small honey cake for William, a rare treat to celebrate. Back at home, the family gathers around their rough-hewn table, the fire casting a warm glow. Agnes listens, her eyes wide, as Elias describes the deal. "This could change everything," she says softly, squeezing his hand. William, clutching the sticky cake, declares he'll be a merchant like his father one day. Elias laughs, his heart full. For a moment, life feels perfect, but perfection is fragile in a city like this. Across town, in a dimly lit tavern, Geoffrey sits alone, his fingers tight around a mug. The royal contract should have been theirs together, he thinks, but Ilias's name is the one people remember. The seed of betrayal is taking root, and it won't be long before it blooms into something dark. London's streets may glitter with opportunity, but they're paved with traps for the unwary. Elias, for all his savvy, is walking into one. Next, we'll see how a single whispered lie begins to unravel everything he's built, as envy turns a friend into a foe. Chapter 2. Shadows of Alliance. The sun dips low over London's smoky skyline, casting long shadows across the bustling wool exchange where Elias Thorne seals his deals with a confident grin. It's 1285, and Elias is riding high, his latest contract. with a king's court promising wealth that could secure his family's future. But in the flickering torchlight of a crowded tavern that evening, trouble brews. Elias sits with Geoffrey Blackwood, his trusted partner, sharing ale and tales of their early days scraping by in London's cutthroat markets. Geoffrey's laugh is hearty, but his eyes don't match his smile. They're sharp, calculating, darting to the side as if hiding something. Unknown to Elias, Geoffrey has been nursing a grudge. Elias's recent success, especially the royal contract, has left Geoffrey feeling like the lesser partner, his pride bruised by whispers that Elias is the true mastermind of their ventures. In this era, alliances were everything. Guilds ruled trade, and a single misstep could ruin a man. Geoffrey, drowning in envy, meets secretly with a rival merchant, Simon de Vere, in a damp alley behind the tavern. Simon, a sly opportunist with a knack for exploiting weaknesses, offers Geoffrey a deal: betray Elias, frame him for cheating the guild, and Geoffrey can take the royal contract for himself. The plan is simple but vicious blunt: false evidence of Elias selling shoddy wool to the crown, a crime that could land him in the pillory. Geoffrey hesitates, his loyalty to Elias warring with his greed, but the promise of wealth tips the scales. He slips a forged ledger into Elias's records, its pages doctored to show inflated prices and poor quality goods. As Elias sleeps soundly that night, dreaming of his son's future, Geoffrey's betrayal sets a trap that's about to snap shut. The medieval world was unforgiving. Honesty was expected, but cunning often won. Next, we'll uncover how Elias's world begins to crumble when the guild's suspicions ignite. Chapter 3: The Guild's Suspicion Dawn breaks over London in 1285, and Elias Thorne wakes to a city humming with trade and secrets. Fresh off his royal contract, he's at the wool exchange, inspecting fleeces with his usual care. But something's off. Guild officials are whispering, their eyes darting his way. The Wool Guild, a powerful body that polices trade, thrives on trust but pounces on deceit. Yesterday, an anonymous tip reached them. Elias, the tip claims, has been passing off low-grade wool as premium to the king's clothier. The accusation is false, but Geoffrey's forged ledger, planted in Elias's records, tells a damning story. At noon, two stern-faced guild enforcers summon Elias to the guild hall. Their questions are sharp. Why do your records show inflated prices? Where's the proof of quality? Elias, stunned, scrambles to explain, but the ledger, his own, yet unfamiliar, betrays him. In this era, guild justice is swift. A merchant's reputation is everything, and Elias's is crumbling. He senses a trap, but can't pinpoint the source. As the officials warn of an investigation, fear grips him. Punishment could mean the pillory, or worse, banishment. Back home, Agnes sees his pale face and knows trouble's brewing. The city that once lifted Elias now threatens to crush him. Next, we'll see how the noose tightens as Elias faces the mob's judgment in the heart of London. Chapter 4: The Trap springs shut. The year is 1285, and London's cobblestone streets buzz with whispers as Elias Thorne's world begins to unravel. It's been 2 days since the guild's accusing glares at the Guildhall, and now the air feels heavier, like a storm about to break. Elias paces his Cheapside home, his mind racing. The forged ledger, planted by his once trusted friend Geoffrey Blackwood, has done its damage. The guild's investigation has moved fast, too fast. By midday, a grim-faced bailiff pounds on Elias's door, flanked by 2 guards in leather tunics. "Elias Thorne, you're summoned to answer for fraud against the crown," the bailiff barks, his voice cold as iron. Agnes clutches William, her eyes wide with fear, as Elias is led away through jeering crowds. In 13th century London, justice is a public spectacle, and the guild's word is law. Fraud, especially against the king's court, is a grave offence, and the punishment looms. The pillory, a wooden frame in the town square where offenders face the mob's wrath. At the Guildhall, Elias stands before a panel of guild elders, their faces carved with suspicion. The forged ledger lies open, its false entries, glaring prices inflated, wool quality misrepresented. Elias protests, his voice steady but desperate. "I've never cheated a soul. Someone's tampered with my books." But the elders, swayed by Simon de Vere's sly influence and Geoffrey's silent betrayal, see only guilt. Evidence in this era is less about truth and more about power, and Elias has no allies here. The head elder, a stern man named Master Hugh, delivers the verdict: 3 days in the pillory, starting tomorrow, to show London the cost of deceit. Elias's heart sinks. The pillory means humiliation, rotten vegetables, stones, and worse, hurled by a vengeful crowd. Worse still, his trade, his reputation, his family's future all hang in the balance. As he's marched back home under guard to prepare, Elias catches a glimpse of Geoffrey in the crowd, his old friends. Face unreadable. Doubt gnaws at him. Could Geoffrey, his brother in all but blood, have done this? The thought is too painful to hold. At home, Agnes tries to stay strong, whispering, "We'll get through this, Elias." William, too young to understand, clings to his father's hand. That night, unable to sleep, Elias stares at the flickering hearth, replaying every deal. Every moment with Geoffrey. The city outside hums with its usual chaos, but for Elias, it's a trap that's snapped shut. Tomorrow, he'll face the pillory's shame, but the real battle is just beginning. Next, we'll witness Elias locked in the pillory as London's mob unleashes its fury and a glimmer of truth emerges. Chapter 5. The Pillory's Wrath. It's a grey, damp morning in London, 1285, and the town square near Cheapside is a seething mass of noise and bodies. The pillory, a crude wooden frame with holes for head and hands, stands like a grim sentinel. At the centre, its weathered boards stained from years of public shame. Elias Thorne, once a proud wool merchant, is led through the jeering crowd, his wrists bound by rough hemp rope. The air reeks of rotting fish and unwashed bodies, and the cobblestones are slick with mud and worse. Today, Elias faces the first of his 3 days in the pillory. Punishment for a crime he didn't commit, fraud against the crown, orchestrated by his betrayer, Geoffrey Blackwood, and the scheming rival, Simon de Vere, in 13th century London. The pillory is more than a penalty. It's a spectacle designed to break a man's spirit, where the mob becomes judge and executioner. Elias, his heart pounding, is about to learn just how cruel his city can be. As the guards lock Elias into the pillory, the wooden yoke clamps tight around his neck and wrists, forcing him to stoop in a humiliating bow. The crowd, fishmongers, apprentices, even children, presses closer, their shouts blending into a deafening roar. "Cheat, swindler!" They yell, their faces twisted with glee. Elias tries to hold his head high, but the first missiler, rotten cabbage, splats against his cheek, its sour stink stinging his nose. A chorus of laughter erupts, and soon a barrage follows. Overripe apples, clumps of mud, and something wet and foul that Elias doesn't dare name. The pain is sharp, but the shame cuts deeper. He thinks of Agnes and William, safe at home but surely hearing the mob's cries. In this era, public punishment is a warning to all. Step out of line and the city will devour you. The square is a chaotic theatre. Merchants pause their haggling to watch, while street vendors hawk pies to the crowd, turning Ilias's suffering into a twisted festival. A toothless old woman, her shawl tattered, hurls a turnip and cackles. That's for cheating the king. Elias grits his teeth, his jaw tight with anger and confusion. He spent years building trust, checking every bale of wool himself, yet here he is, branded a liar. The guild's forged ledger, planted by Geoffrey, has painted him as a fraud, and the mob doesn't care for proof. In 1285, truth is whatever the powerful say it is. Elias scans the crowd, hoping for a friendly face, but finds none. Then, through the blur of flying muck, he spots a figure lingering at the edge of the square. Geoffrey. Their eyes meet for a fleeting moment, and Elias's stomach twists. Is that guilt in Geoffrey's gaze, or just cold calculation? Before he can dwell on it, a stone grazes his temple, drawing a trickle of blood and a fresh wave of jeers. Hours crawl by, and the sun climbs, offering no warmth in the chilly autumn air. Ilias's back aches from the stooped position, his throat dry from shouting denials that no one hears. The crowd thins at times, only to swell again as new gawkers arrive. A young apprentice, barely older than William, tosses an egg that cracks against Elias's shoulder, the yolk dripping down his tunic. The boy laughs, egged on by his mates, but Elias catches a flicker of doubt in his eyes, as if he's not sure why he's joining the cruelty. It's a small moment, but it plants a seed of hope in Elias maybe. Not everyone believes the guild's lies. In medieval London, the mob is fickle, swayed by gossip but also by truth, if it can break through. Elias clings to that thought, whispering a prayer to St. Thomas, patron of merchants, for strength as dusk falls. The guards finally unlock the pillory, and Elias stumbles, his limbs numb and his face caked with filth. The crowd disperses, their sport over for the day, but Elias knows he'll face this again tomorrow. The guards shove him toward home, where Agnes waits, her face pale as she washes the grime from his skin. "They're wrong about you," she whispers fiercely, her hands trembling. William, silent for once, watches from the corner, his small fists clenched. Elias pulls them close, his voice hoarse but firm. "I'll clear my name. I swear it." That night, as he lies awake, a memory surfaces a moment weeks ago when Geoffrey asked odd questions about the royal contract, his tone too curious. The seed of suspicion grows. Elias doesn't know how, but he's starting to sense the shape of the betrayal. The pillory may break his body, but not his resolve. Next, we'll see how Elias begins to fight back, searching for proof in a city stacked against him. Chapter 6. A Spark of Defiance. The second day of Elias Thorne's punishment dawns in 1285, and London's town square is already stirring with the promise of fresh spectacle. The pillory looms, its wooden frame a cruel throne for the disgraced. Wool merchant Elias, bruised and battered from yesterday's onslaught, is marched through the muddy streets, the jeers of early risers ringing in his ears. His tunic is still stained with yesterday's filth-frotten eggs. Mud and worsand, his body aches, but a fire burns in his chest. Last night's realization about Geoffrey Blackwood's odd questions has hardened into suspicion. Elias knows. He's been betrayed, and today, locked in the pillory. He's not just enduring, he's watching, listening, searching for a way to fight back. In 13th century London, a man's survival depends on wits as much as strength, and Elias is determined to reclaim his name, as the guards clamp the Pillory's yoke around his neck and wrists. The crowd swells, their shouts sharper than yesterday's. Thief! Liar, they cry, hurling cabbages and stones that sting Elias's skin. A rotten fish slaps his shoulder, its stench choking, but Elias grits his teeth, his eyes scanning the mob. He's looking for clues, anything to unravel the trap set. By Geoffrey and Simon de Vere, the square is a chaotic swirl of faces. Bakers with flour-dusted aprons, urchins darting through legs, and merchants watching with smug satisfaction. Elias knows the guild's verdict has painted him guilty, but he also knows London's gossip travels faster than the Thames. If he can find one ally, one crack in the story, he might turn the tide. The morning drags, each missile a reminder of his fall. A young woman, her basket heavy with turnips, hesitates before tossing one, her throw weak, almost apologetic. Elias catches her eye, and she looks away, but not before he sees a flicker of doubt. It's a small thing, but it fuels him. In this era, the mob follows the loudest voice, but some still question. Elias's mind races, piecing together memories. He recalls Geoffrey's nervous fidgeting when they last checked the ledgers together, how he lingered over the books Elias kept for the royal contract. The forged ledger, with its false entries, must have come from someone close, someone who knew Elias's records intimately. Geoffrey's face in the crowd yesterday, that fleeting guilt, looms large in Elias's thoughts. He's starting to see the shape of the betrayal. But proof is another matter. Around noon, a new figure catches Elias's eye. A scruffy boy, no older than 12, loitering near a butcher's stall. The boy, ragged and sharped, isn't throwing anything. Instead, he's watching Elias with a curious intensity, like he's studying a puzzle. Elias recognizes him, Jem, an apprentice to a minor wool merchant who sometimes runs errands for the guild. Jem's master, old Wat, is no friend of Simon de Vere, who's been squeezing smaller traders out of the market. Could Jem know something? Elias risks a whisper, barely audible over the crowd's din. Jem, lad, come closer. The boy startles but edges nearer, pretending to tie his shoe. You know I'm no cheat, Elias murmurs. Find old Wat. Ask if he's heard whispers about my ledger. Jem nods, almost imperceptibly, and slips away. It's a long shot, but Elias has little else. The afternoon wears on, the crowd's energy fading as the sun dips. A stone clips Elias's ear, drawing blood, but he barely flinches. His mind is elsewhere, plotting. In 1285, the guild's power is near absolute, but it's not flawless. Merchants like old Wat, on the fringes, often hear secrets the powerful miss. If Jem can bring word of tampering, Elias might have a thread to pull. As the guards finally unlock the pillory at dusk, Elias's legs buckle, but his spirit holds firm. He stumbles home, Agnes's arms waiting to steady him. She cleans his wounds, her voice soft but fierce. You're stronger than this, Elias. We'll find a way. William, clutching a wooden toy, asks, Why do they hate you, Papa? Elias kneels, meeting his son's eyes. They're wrong, lad, and I'll prove it. That night, as the city hums beyond their walls, a soft knock comes. It's Jem, his face half hidden in a hood. Old Wat says Simon de Vere's been boasting, he whispers. Says he's got the guild in his pocket and a new partner who'll take your place. Elias's heart pounds Geoffrey. It's not proof, but it's a start. The city's shadows are deep. but Elias is learning to navigate them. Tomorrow, his final day in the pillory, he'll face the mob again, but now he has a spark of defiance. Next, we'll see how Elias uses this clue to confront the truth as the stakes climb higher in London's unforgiving streets. Chapter 7. The Final Day's Reckoning. The year is 1285, and London's town square pulses with the restless energy of a city hungry for its final act of justice. It's Elias Thorne's third and last day in the pillory, and the air is thick with the stench of rotting produce and the sharp chill of an autumn morning. Elias, his body bruised and his spirit tested, is led through the jeering crowd, his steps heavy but his eyes sharp. The wooden yoke awaits, a symbol of his public shame. But last night's whispered message from Jem, the scruffy apprentice, has lit a fire in him. Old Watt's words, that Simon de Vere is boasting of a new partner, point straight to Geoffrey. Blackwood's betrayal. In 13th century London, truth is a rare coin, but Elias is determined to find it, even as the mob prepares to bury him in scorn. Today, he's not just surviving the pillory, he's hunting for a way to turn the tide as the guards lock Elias into the pillory. The crowd roars, louder than before, sensing the climax of their sport. Fraud, cheat, they shout, pelting him with a barrage of slimy cabbages, overripe, pears, and clumps of foul-smelling muck. A jagged stone catches his brow, sending a warm trickle of blood down his face, but Elias barely flinches. His mind is racing, piecing together Jem's clue with every scrap of memory. He recalls a day at the wool exchange when Geoffrey lingered too long at the ledger, his fingers twitching nervously. He thinks of Simon de Vere's smug grin at the Guildhall, as if he'd already won. The Guild's verdict relied on that forged ledger, but if Elias can prove it was tampered with, he might expose the plot. The challenge is time after today. The Guild could banish him from trade, stripping his family of their livelihood. The square is a chaotic swirl of faces, from grimy urchins to stern merchants, all eager to see Elias broken. But not everyone is against him. A few in the crowd, small traders like old Watt, who felt Simon's greed watch with quiet unease. Elias spots Jem again, the boy blending into the mob near a baker's stall, his eyes darting nervously. Elias risks a low whisper, "Jem, any more from Watt?" The boy edges closer, pretending to scoop mud for a throw. Watt says he saw Geoffrey with Simon late at night, passing a book, Jem mutters. He's meeting the Guild tomorrow to claim your contract. Elias's heart pounds a book, likely the forged ledger. It's the first solid thread, but he needs more to unravel the lie. In this era, guilds hold iron control, and accusing a fellow merchant without proof is as good as suicide. As the sun climbs, the assault continues. A fishwife hurls a spoiled trout, its scales glinting before it slaps Elias's chest, drawing a howl of laughter. A child, egged on by his friends, tosses a rotten egg that bursts across Elias's shoulder, the stench choking, but Elias' focus sharpens. He notices a familiar face in the crowd. Agnes, his wife, standing at the edge, her shawl pulled tight. She shouldn't be here, risking the mob's wrath, but her eyes burn with defiance, mirroring his own. Elias manages a faint nod, a silent promise he won't break. Agnes slips away, likely to find old Watt or other allies. In 1285, women rarely meddle in guild affairs, but Agnes is no ordinary wife. She's as fierce as Elias, and she knows their family's future hangs in the balance by afternoon. Elias's body screams for relief, his neck raw from the Pillory's grip, yet his mind is alive, plotting. He knows confronting Geoffrey directly is risky without hard evidence. The guild will dismiss him as desperate. But old Wat's distrust of Simon could be a wedge. Watt, a grizzled merchant with no love for the guild's elites, might hold the key. Elias whispers to Jem again, his voice hoarse. Tell Watt to watch Geoffrey tonight. If he's meeting Simon, we need proof. Jem nods and vanishes into the crowd. The risk is high. Jem's just a boy, and Watt's no hero, but Elias has no other cards to play. As dusk falls, the guards unlock the Pillory, and Elias collapses, his legs trembling. The crowd thins, their thirst for cruelty sated. The guards shove him toward home, where Agnes waits with a damp cloth and a fierce embrace. Jem found me, she says, her voice low. Watt's watching Geoffrey's house tonight. Elias nods, his jaw tight. The city's shadows are closing in, but so is the truth. Tomorrow the guild will decide his fate, but Elias is no longer just a victim. He's a man with a plan, however fragile. Next, we'll see how Elias and his unlikely allies chase the truth, as London's treacherous web tightens around them all. Chapter 8. Shadows and Secrets. The night of 1285 cloaks London in a damp, inky darkness. The city's narrow alleys, lit only by flickering torches and the occasional glow from a tavern window. Elias Thorne, his body sore from 3 days in the Pillory, sits by the dim hearth in his Cheapside home, his mind alight with a fragile hope. The mob's jeers still echo in his ears. But Jem's message, old Watt's report of Geoffrey Blackwood meeting Simon de Vere with a mysterious Booker's, given Elias a thread to pull. Tonight, he's betting everything on old Watt, a grizzled merchant with no love for the guild's elites, to uncover proof of Geoffrey's betrayal. In 13th century London, truth is a dangerous quarry, and Elias knows one wrong step could cost him more than his trade. It could cost his family's future. As the city sleeps, Elias and his allies move through its shadows, chasing a chance to clear his name. Elias's home is quiet, the fire casting long shadows across the rough wooden floor. Agnes sits beside him, her hands busy mending a torn tunic, but her eyes are sharp, watching Elias's every move. Watt's no fool, she says softly, but he's not your friend either. Be careful what you ask of him. Elias nods, his jaw tight. Old Watt, a small-time wool trader, has survived by keeping his head down and his ears open. If he's seen Geoffrey with Simon, he might hold the key to exposing the forged ledger that branded Elias a fraud. But trust is scarce in London, and Watt's loyalty is to himself. Elias knows he's walking a knife's edge. But with the guild set to finalize his punishment, tomorrow likely banishment from trade, he has no choice but to act. As midnight nears, a soft rap at the door makes Elias's heart leap. It's Jem, the scruffy apprentice, his face half hidden in a tattered hood. Watt sent me, he whispers, slipping inside. He followed Geoffrey to the Red Boar Tavern. Saw him hand Simon a book looked like your ledger, but Watt couldn't get close enough to be sure. Elias's pulse quickens. The ledger, with its false entries, is the heart of the guild's case against him. If he can prove it was tampered with, he might sway the elders. But Jem's next words chill him. Simon's got guards now, and Geoffrey's acting twitchy. Watt says they're meeting the guild at dawn to seal your contract for themselves. Agnes grips Elias's arm, her voice low. They're moving fast to bury you. Elias paces, his mind racing. In 1285, the Wool Guild's power is near absolute. its elders swayed by coin and influence. Simon de Vere, a wealthy merchant with a silver tongue, has both, and Geoffrey's betrayal has given him the perfect weapon. Elias needs hard proof, not just Watt's word, but the ledger itself or a witness who'll speak. He turns to Jem. Can Watt get closer? Maybe see where they're keeping the book. Jem hesitates, his young face creased with fear. Watt scared, Master Thorn. Simon's men are rough, and the guild's watching Watt too. Elias kneels, meeting the boy's eyes. Tell Watt I'll owe him everything, will coin, whatever he wants. Just get me something solid by dawn. Jem nods and vanishes into the night. The hours crawl by, and Elias can't sleep. He thinks of William, asleep upstairs, unaware of how close their family is to ruin. In this era, a merchant's banishment is a death sentence for his trade shops shun you. Guilds blacklist you, and your family starves. Ilias's hands clench as he imagines confronting Geoffrey, his friend of a decade who turned traitor for a share of the royal contract. He recalls their early days, scraping by as apprentices, sharing dreams of rising above London's cutthroat markets. How did it come to this? Envy, Elias realizes, is a poison that festers unseen. Outside, the city hums with its usual chaos-drunken laughter from taverns. The distant bark of dog's butt for Elias. It's a battlefield. Just before dawn, another knock. It's old Watt himself, his weathered face grim under a hooded cloak. I got closer, he mutters, glancing nervously at the door. Saw Simon's man tuck a ledger in a locked chest at the Red Boar. Geoffrey was there, sweating like a pig. They're planning to show it to the guild today. Claim it's yours. Elias's heart pounds. It's the proof he needs, but getting it means breaking into Simon's territory. Watt hesitates, then adds, I'll help, Thorn, but if this goes wrong, I'm gone. Elias clasps his hand, a rare gesture in a city where trust is a gamble. The plan is desperate. Slip into the tavern, find the chest, and steal the ledger before the guild meets. As the first light of dawn creeps over London, Elias feels a surge of resolve. The truth is close, but so is danger. Next, we'll see how. Elias risks everything in a daring move to seize the evidence and confront his betrayer. Chapter 9. The Daring Gambler. First light of dawn creeps over London's rooftops in 1285, painting the muddy streets in shades of grey. Elias Thorn, his body weary from 3 days in the pillory, stands in his Cheapside home, his heart racing, with a mix of fear and resolve. Old Watt's words from last night burn in his mind. The forged ledger, the key to proving his innocence, lies in a locked chest at the Red Boar Tavern, guarded by Simon de Vere's men. With the Wool Guild set to meet at noon to finalize Elias's banishment and hand his royal contract to Geoffrey Blackwood, time is slipping away. In 13th century London, justice is a game of power, and Elias is a pawn less he can pull off. A desperate plan to steal the ledger and expose the truth. Tonight, he and his unlikely allies, Old Watt and young Jem, will risk everything in a city where one misstep means ruin. Elias gathers his courage, his hands steady as he tucks a small knife into his belt, a tool, not a weapon, for prying open a lock. Agnes watches, her face pale but fierce. Come back to us, she whispers, pressing a worn St. Thomas medallion into his hand. Elias nods, his throat tight, and slips out into the pre-dawn chill. The streets are quiet, save for the creak of a cart and the distant bark of a dog. Old Watt waits in an alley near the tavern, his grizzled face half hidden under a hood. Jem, shivering but alert, stands beside him. Simon's men are inside, Wat mutters. 2 guards, maybe 3, and the chest is in a back room. Elias's plan is simple but perilous. Jem will distract the guards, Wat will keep watch, and Elias will sneak in to grab the ledger. In this era, taverns are dens of vice, and breaking in could land them all in chains or worse. The Red Boar looms ahead, its timber walls blackened by years of smoke. The tavern's sign, a crude boar painted red, swings in the breeze. Jem, small and quick, darts to the front, banging on the door and shouting, "Fire! Fire!" in the stables. His voice cracks with convincing panic, and soon 2 of Simon's burly guards stumble out, cursing as they scan the empty street. Elias, heart pounding, slips around the back, where a warped wooden door hangs loose. Wat nods, his eyes scanning the shadows, and Elias pries the door open with his knife, the hinges groaning softly. Inside, the tavern reeks of stale ale and sweat. A single candle flickers in the back room, casting light on a heavy oak chest reinforced with iron bands. Elias's hands shake as he kneels, working the knife into the lock. Every creak of the floorboards makes his pulse spike. Simon's men could return any moment. The lock is stubborn, its mechanism rusted from years of neglect. Elias whispers a prayer to St. Thomas, his fingers slick with sweat. Outside, Jem's shouts grow louder, buying time, but the guards' voices are getting closer. Finally, the lock clicks and the chest creaks open. Inside, among pouches of coin and crumpled parchments, lies a leather-bound ledger Elias's own, but its pages are wrong, filled with forged entries in a hand that mimics his. He tucks it under his cloak, his heart soaring. This is the proof. He needs to clear his name. But as he turns to leave, heavy footsteps thud behind him. One of Simon's guards, a hulking man with a scarred face, fills the doorway. "Thief!" the guard bellows, drawing a short blade. Elias freezes, his mind racing. Fighting is no option, he's no warrior, and the guild would hang him for this. Thinking fast, Elias grabs a nearby stool and hurls it, catching the guard's knee. The man stumbles, cursing, and Elias bolts past, dodging a wild swing of the blade. He bursts out the back door, where Wat grabs his arm, pulling him into the alley. "Move, Thorn," Wat hisses. Jem sprints up, panting, as the guard's shouts echo from the tavern. The trio weaves through London's maze of alleys, their breath clouding in the cold air. By some miracle, they lose the guards in the twisting streets, ducking into a shadowed doorway near the Thames. Elias clutches the ledger, its weight a promise of redemption or disaster if they're caught. "We got it," he gasps, meeting Wat's grim nod and Jem's wide-eyed grin. But dawn is breaking, and the guild's meeting is hours away. Elias needs to get the ledger to someone who'll listen, but Simon and Geoffrey will be watching, back. At home, Agnes's relief is tempered by fear as Elias shows her the ledger. "It's proof," he says, flipping through pages of false entries. "But the guild won't hear me unless we find an elder who's not in Simon's pocket." Wat, wiping sweat from his brow, mutters, "Try Master Roland. He's old, stubborn, and hates Simon's guts." It's a slim chance. Roland is a minor elder, but he's known for fairness. As the city wakes, Elias knows the clock is ticking. The guild's verdict looms, and Simon's men will be hunting for the stolen ledger. Elias's fight is far from over, but he's no longer just a victim. Next, we'll see how Elias faces the guild with the truth in hand, as London's power plays come to a head. Chapter 10. Truth in the Guildhall. The sun climbs high over London in 1285, casting a harsh light on the Guildhall's stone walls, where the city's wool merchants gather to seal Elias Thorne's fate. Elias, clutching the stolen ledger that proves his innocence, strides through the bustling streets, his body battered from the pillory, but his spirit unbroken. Old Wat and young Jem trail close behind, their faces tense with the weight of their daring theft from the Red Boar Tavern. The forged ledger, planted by Geoffrey Blackwood and Simon de Vere, has branded Elias a fraud, but now he holds the evidence to expose their betrayal. In 13th century London, the guild's word is law, and Elias has one chance to sway them before they banish him and hand his royal contract to his enemies. Today, in the heart of the city's power, Elias will fight for his name, his family, and his future. The Guildhall is a cavernous chamber, its air thick with the scent of ink and wool. Elders in fur-trimmed robes sit at a long oak table, their faces stern as they review parchments. The crowd merchants, clerks, and onlookers, their eyes fixed on Elias as he's led in, the ledger tucked under his cloak. Simon de Vere stands near the front, his smile smug, with Geoffrey at his side, avoiding Elias's gaze. Master Roland, the fair-minded elder old Wat mentioned, sits at the table's end, his lined face unreadable. Elias's heart pounds. He knows Simon's influence runs deep, and most elders are swayed by his coin. But Roland's reputation for justice is Elias's only hope. As the head elder, Master Hugh, calls the meeting to order, Elias steps forward, his voice steady despite the ache in his bones. "I'm no fraud," he declares. "I've proof of a plot against me." The room falls silent as Elias holds up the ledger, its pages open to the forged entries. "This book, taken from my records, was altered to show false dealings," he says, his voice ringing. "The handwriting isn't mine. Compare it to my true ledgers." He pulls out an older book, one Agnes kept safe at home, and passes both. To Roland, the elder's eyes narrow as he studies the pages, the crowd whispering. Simon's smile falters, and Geoffrey shifts nervously, sweat beading on his brow. In this era, guilds prize order, but they also fear public scandal. If Elias can prove tampering, Simon's grip on the guild could crack. Roland hands the ledgers to Master Hugh, who frowns. Tracing the mismatched script, Simon leaps to his feet, his voice smooth but sharp. "This man's desperate, forging his own proof." He scoffs, but Elias is ready. "Then ask old Wat," he says, nodding to the grizzled merchant in the crowd. Wat steps forward, his voice gruff but clear. "I saw Geoffrey hand a book too. Simon at the Red Boar, late at night. They spoke of taking Thorne's contract." The crowd gasps, and Geoffrey's face pales. Jem, standing at the back, adds, "I saw it too." His young voice carries a raw honesty that makes the elders pause. In 1285, a boy's word holds little weight, but Watts carries enough to stir doubt. Elias presses his advantage. "Search Simon's home. You'll find more proof letters, coin, anything tying him to this plot." Master Hugh hesitates, but Roland's voice cuts through. "Do it," he says, his tone firm. Guards are dispatched, and the room buzzes with tension as they wait. Elias catches Agnes's eye at the back. She slipped in, defying custom, her face alight with hope. Minutes stretch like hours, but the guards return with a satchel from Simon's house, filled with letters in Geoffrey's hand, detailing their scheme to frame Elias and split the royal contract. The crowd erupts, and Simon's composure cracks, his protests drowned out. Geoffrey, cornered, stammers, "I had no choice, Simon forced me." But the elders' faces harden. Betrayal in the guild is a sin as grave as fraud. Master Hugh rises, his verdict clear. Elias Thorne is cleared. Simon de Vere and Geoffrey Blackwood will face the pillory and banishment. The room roars, some cheering, others stunned. Elias sags, relief flooding him as Agnes rushes to his side, William clinging to her skirts. The royal contract is restored, and Elias's name is clean. As he leaves the Guildhall, the city feels different, not kinder, but less hostile. London's streets will always be treacherous, but Elias has proven he can navigate them. He looks at his family, then at Wat and Jem, who risked much for him. "Thank you," he says, his voice thick. The fight is over, but the scars remain a reminder of trust's fragility. What a journey through medieval London. If you loved this tale of betrayal and redemption, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more stories from history's shadows. Drop a comment, would you have risked it all like Elias? Let's keep the conversation going.